ladies and gentlemen, to MBR, or as we like to call it around here, Nothing But Rants, the show where I find topics that I'm oddly passionate about and I pontificate upon them. These are not hot takes, but rather takes that I'm hot about. You can't love me in January for the things you criticize me for in August, okay? That is not a musical lyric. That is a fact right now about what I would consider the tone or the temperature of the Georgia fan base. And honestly, as I always am on this channel, it happens or seemingly happens every single year. Every single year that I have covered this football team, that I have done this, every single fall camp, there's an injury or two or three or four, and they really start to pile up. And after about the third time a football injury happens, I start getting direct messages. I start getting comments. I start getting questions. I start getting concerns about what's going on. Something along the lines of, what's Kirby doing to these kids? What the hell are we doing in practice? What's going on with all these injuries? It's got to be the turf. No, it's got to be the practice fields. No, it's got to be Scott Sinclair. No, it's Ron Corson's fault. Everybody is running to blame. Everybody is trying to run to blame. So it's not that, ladies and gentlemen. It's never been that. In fact, if you're looking for someone or something to blame, just blame football. It's football's fault. Sure, Georgia practices hard. They practice really, really hard. They do. But they don't practice anything other than football. That's it. They try to simulate the game as best they can. Football injuries happen. So when you hear about a non-contact injury like the one that broke today with Branson Robinson, there's no one to get mad at except for the randomness that is the football gods. That's all you have to get angry at today. Okay, so again, there's no one to blame when Kendall Milton has hamstring tightness. That's just the way of the works. That's the bad news. That's the bad breaks of this game. It's nothing deeper than that. You don't have to start breaking down, oh, are they doing RDLs? Are they doing Romanian deadlifts properly? Are they doing them enough in the weight room? No, it's just football. Hamstrings get tight sometimes. Non-contact injuries happen sometimes. This is football, folks. As Forrest Gump told us, shit happens. It does, okay? And you know how I know this? In 2022, to open the season against Oregon, there were 8 Georgia football players on the injured reserve. In 2021, to open up against Clemson, there were 10 Georgia players on the injury reserve in the injury report. This happens. Right now, there are 8 Georgia football players on the injury report. It is the nature of football. These are all football-related injuries. They're all randomized injuries. They are not consistently deficient in one area. They are not constantly breaking clavicles or constantly having concussion symptom injuries or constantly breaking hands. You know what those are? Those are signs of improper preparation. That is not the case that is going on right now at Georgia. It's never been the case. In fact, it's always been randomized football injuries. It's always been randomized non-contact injuries. It's always been a foot here, a knee there. That's what it's always been. If you want to start some conspiracy theories, start talking about the feet. Start talking about the feet, but I know what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to sit here on this network and start questioning the feet or the what's going on the feet, when what's going on the feet and them logos pay the university $3.5 million a year. So that's what we're not going to do. But the rest of the injuries, ladies and gentlemen, ain't shit you can do about it. It's just football. And we have to play football. We have to practice football in order to be prepared to play football during the season. So every single year when this happens, everybody wants to rush and run to blame. Don't do it. There's no reason to. There's no one to blame here except for football. And if you want to blame football, then I guess we're going to be here every single year, which it seems like we are anyways. Welcome in to Talk the Dog, the show where we find a bone to pick and a take to give. These are not hot takes. These are dog takes. We got a loaded show for you guys. I want to welcome in the boys first. How we doing today on this fine Wednesday evening?
Fantastic.
Yeah?
Happy to be here, man. What about you?
I can't complain. It's week 2? Week 2 in the week 3.
Week 3.
We're week 3 here in this joint right here up in this new studio, if you will. Still don't have a name. Somebody recommended the film room because it's literally, that's what it is. It is a room and a building dedicated to film. Don't know how I feel about that yet. We're still processing those, so keep feeding them in the chats and in the comments. We do have a loaded show for you guys. We're going to react in full to this Branson Robinson news here in just a second. Dejon Edwards banged up as well. You would have known about that Saturday afternoon if you're over on patreon.com/Brooks Austin. We're going to talk about the leash that is presented to Carson Beck here this season. We talk a little bit about the number one player in America that committed in 2026 yesterday, Julian Lewis. We're going to talk about it from the Georgia perspective, what it means, how you can go about getting into these types of recruitments moving forward, or if it's something you just never were in, or if it's something that was never going to be a fit, if you will, never going to be a couple that was going to end up getting married in anyways. Okay, we're going to talk about concept of the day as well. A lot of offense nowadays based off middle field open, middle field closed, pre-snap looks. I'm going to explain to you what that means and what it means for quarterback play. It's going to be a great one, but first I want to knock out some business. Hey, the folks over at PrizePicks, they're great to us. You should be great to them. PrizePicks.com. Use promo code Brooks today. You'll get a 100% deposit match. I've explained this over and over to you guys. What does this mean? You put 50 bucks in, they give you 50 bucks right on spot, okay? So you will double your deposit today up to $100 over on PrizePicks.com, but only if you use promo code Brooks. I've been talking to a bunch of you guys. Okay, I know some of y'all are getting hooked, and that's good, okay? It's good that you're getting hooked on the supporters that support us, all right? It's how we go do mic'd up sessions on Friday night. It's how we continue to have the boys in here on the studio. It's how we continue to do live streams like we've been doing Monday through Tuesday, 8 to 10 p.m. on this beautiful channel. So make sure you're showing love over there. Hey, we're also up on podcasts. Subscribe however you find your podcast. If you don't catch us live, we're doing our best to put those up the night after or as soon as we get done with the shows every single night. Follow me on social at Brooks Austin BA, and I want to give out one more shout out to patreon.com/Brooks Austin. Glad you guys could be here today with us. Obviously, the main news, as you can see on the title head of today's description of the show. Branson Robinson ruptured a patella tendon yesterday in practice. He will be out the remainder of the season. I want to give my boy Jay Will a shout out. He had this little nugget in our article that we wrote today about the breaking news. Quote, Branson Robinson piled up 330 rushing yards on 68 attempts along with 3 touchdowns last year. His biggest game of the season came against the Auburn Tigers, in which he rushed for 98 yards and a touchdown on 12 carries. In that game, Robinson became the first true freshman running back in program history to rush for over 95 yards in his first 10-plus carry performance since none other than Sony Michel in 2014. Hey, by the way, the stat god himself, Jay Will, can we give him 3? Just an elite stat and an elite performance from a running back that we got to see a little bit of his potential last year against Auburn. Just the immediate thoughts about the sad news today, if you will. I know it's not career ending, but it is season ending for a guy that we had high hopes for this year.
Yeah, he had quite a few bright spots last season, like you mentioned, Auburn, and then even in the national championship game, he rushed for 2 touchdowns. So it seemed like he was building up a role that he was going to be playing meaningful snaps this season for Georgia, especially for a room that was already running a little bit thin. So losing a guy like him, yeah, that's a tough break.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely probably the last position if you had to pick to lose a guy at. Running back is up there. They're already really thin at that. So it sucks for that. That Brock Bowers over 25 carries is looking pretty nice though now.
Yeah, I know. I kind of gave Jonathan some shit. That was you that gave me that bet or the?
No, that was me. That's you who said that.
That was you. I kind of gave you some shit on it. It was like, damn, that's more than all of his career attempts combined times 2. That was a lot. You're right. It's looking really, really good. I had some immediate takeaways here. We're kind of running out of options at this point to not worry. All right. If you're a Georgia fan listening tonight, most people will be like, you got a great offensive line, right? Your running back room's pretty deep. I say not quite, right? Under the current roster circumstances, right? If y'all had to play a football game today, you're running out Cash Jones with the 1s, Andrew Paul with the 2s, Roger Robinson with the 3s, based off what we watched today at practice. Now, I'm not here to say that running back room is bad or anything. It's just not what Georgia running back rooms standardly are, right? Think about those names: Cash Jones, Andrew Paul, Roger Robinson. That is a walk-on, a guy returning from a torn ACL injury, and a true freshman. That's your running back room today if you played a football game tomorrow. Now, the good news, the silver lining with regards to that, it sounds like Dejon Edwards might be back game 1. It sounds like Kendall Milton's going to be back game 1. Also great news, SEC play and the real conference or the real actual schedule doesn't pick up until week 3 against South Carolina. All those things are really, really good news, but it doesn't look great today, right now. Again, if you had to play tomorrow, really, really thin at the running back position. It's also great that you've kind of established your roster and set your roster to not necessarily have to depend on the running back position this year. You're going to depend on all your weapons elsewhere, right?
Yeah, it's just kind of, I mean, Georgia already has been depending on more than one guy at the running back spot anyways. So this year you're going to have to deal with maybe a few more than you expected to, but I think they're going to be okay when everything settles down.
Yeah, I mean, the schedule does a lot of favors for the fact that you can kind of get your injuries out of the way. I know going back to the Clemson game, injuries were a big stress. Even in the Oregon game, it was kind of like, wow, they've got a lot of guys out week 1. It doesn't matter as much now because you're going to beat the shit out of the first 2 teams you play. South Carolina, it kind of matters, but again, you've got time to get those guys healthy. So I don't think you have to put as much emphasis on maybe rushing them back to play.
The chat here mentioned Savon Clark. He's looked great in mop-up duty the last couple of years. I wouldn't even go as far as to say great. He's looked serviceable as a walk-on running back in that position of mop-up duty. And I'll be honest, the footage we've seen of Andrew Paul, the wording and the sourcing we're hearing out of camp this fall, the first-person evaluations that we got today as he starts to ramp up even more and more, he looks explosive. He looks closer to that Kenny McIntosh type of back than he does the other backs, if you know what I mean. He looks like he is capable of doing all things as opposed to just carrying the football, which it looks like Roger Robinson might be able to do really well right now. So it sounds like you have 2 running backs, and it looks like, despite all the injuries, you have 2 running backs, one in Roger Robinson that can kind of handle the big boy first and second down carries, the automatic rundowns, right? Looks like he can handle those things as a true freshman. Maybe not to the level that a Kendall Milton could if fully healthy and when fully healthy, but it sounds like he's there and ready to do that, at least physically, right? And then Andrew Paul being able to do all the different things at the running back position based off his skill set that maybe a Dejon Edwards might have been able to provide if fully healthy. Again, I think most of these guys are going to be back by, week 3 when they play South Carolina. The chat's also mentioning Ladd McConkey. We didn't see him during practice observations today, or at least I didn't. All right, my report said he was not there. I didn't see him inside the building with the punt team or with the special teams units. I didn't see him down there with the wide receivers at all today. I did not see 84 on the practice field. Now, I've been covering this football team long enough to know that Kirby Smart lets you see what he wants you to see. I also know that there's a very strong possibility that Ladd McConkey might have been, getting extra treatment, or maybe he was doing whatever. I don't know. But there has been, especially with this football player, with Ladd McConkey, there were multiple times last year, whether it be during bowl season lead up to Ohio State, or whether it be during the national championship practices leading up to that, where Ladd's banged up and he just didn't practice or wasn't seen during the practice availability. Guess who showed up on Saturday, though? And guess who didn't miss games last year? Ladd McConkey. So until we hear, hey, big time injury, I would just presume Ladd's okay. So I don't want to do anything there. Again, that's I haven't heard anything other than what I saw today, which was I didn't see 84.
Yeah, but Ladd's such a warrior. I mean, you could tell during the national championship game that he was hurting. He was kind of on that last end of the season, kind of dealing with some pain, but he just always powers through stuff. Scrappy guy. Yeah,
he has to be, right? This is we talked about how he's not this. He's misconstrued in the sense that people think he's this slot warrior and he's this guy that gets open quick and he's this gadget type little receiver. He's basically a white slot guy. Like, I know that's what he gets labeled, but he's a speed dude. He's a burner, but he is undersized. Like, when he gets hit, it's going to hurt for him more than it would, say, a Tyler Williams that's 6'2", 210. It's just physics. When that guy gets hit, it's going to hurt a little bit more than the other guys. So I don't think it's anything quite necessarily to worry about yet. Or worry about it all. We'll have to see moving forward. The Dejon Edwards news is not necessarily surprising. Injuries happen, like we told you, but it's surprising for this football player. Dejon's been the only back in that room for the last 3 years that's almost like a given. You kind of know what 30 is going to be and where he's going to be. He's going to show up and he's going to play. This injury, I think, is the first that's kind of knocked him out onto this situation where he is on the injury report.
Yeah, Dejon's been that guy that anytime you need someone, you can just lean on him. It seems like he's always available, he's always ready to go, and he's always going to give you some valuable runs. He's always going to make a little bit of a play for you. So
from year one.
Yeah.
Like, I remember freshman year, gets in, a bunch of garbage time, taking plays where he's hit at -2 and turning them into plus 6-yard gains. And I remember his freshman year, Kirby talking about, actually the guy that's probably done the most with the least is 30. And that's where he earned his right and his ability to receive more and more carries. Like I said, everything I've heard, it was a sprained knee, and it's something that is preventatory. How do you say that? Preventative. That's right. You know, me no words. Me no football. Me no words. That's about how you say that right there. But no, it sounds like he's going to be all right and get back into it. Make sure you're hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Did see a knee brace on him today. So we'll see. Once that comes off, that's when you kind of know when guys are really actually going to be getting out there. Like I said, make sure you're hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribing to the channel. We've had an influx of subscribers as of recently, basically since we did that Friday night mic'd up session. If you're a new subscriber today and this is your first time watching TTD, or this is going to be your first time watching NBR later today when we have Josh Pate on, welcome. I hope you enjoy. I hope you hit that subscribe button. I hope you stick around because we are still, despite the fact that we're about 3 years old around here, we're really in the infancies of the new mission, the new goal, the new home, right? The new vibes. This is all very new around here, and we're glad that you guys have hopped on the train whenever and however you did. So welcome in. Glad to have you guys in with us today. Hey, you guys ever seen that viral video of that old dude having that graph where he's like, this is the line of fucking around. This is the line of finding out.
I use that video probably once a week.
So we've all seen it,
Oh, yeah.
right? We've all seen the fuck around and find out. Well, here's the problem with Georgia's schedule this year. They got one of the longest leashes of fuck around time I've ever seen before they have to maybe potentially find out with regards to their schedule. I mean, we could really look at it and we could sit here, and if you're a pessimist, you could say Auburn week 5 on the road, kind of tough. Right? We can really try to say that's when you might find out. That's when you might find out who you are as a football team. And I would say, I don't know. I don't know if Hugh Freeze is going to have the Auburn Tigers 100% ready to compete against the nation's #1 football team and the nation's most talented and most deep football team week 5 of this college football season, which means your timeline of fucking around before you find out has extended all the way till about November 8th, maybe November 11th. Or November 2nd and 4th? November 4th and November 11th. Ole Miss, Tennessee. That's it. If you really look at the schedule today and you ask yourself honestly, when will Georgia be tested on paper? When will we find out? When will we find out who we are as a football team? That timeline, that intersection point on that graph doesn't exist until way down the plot line. So I'm sitting here asking you guys, and I'm asking you guys, and I'm asking everyone listening today here in August, how long is Carson Beck?
You almost said Carson.
I know. How long is Carson Beck's leash going to be this year? If Carson comes out and plays like an A- quarterback for 9 games, doesn't necessarily light it up, but plays serviceable, plays Georgia quarterback play like it has been over the last, 8 years under Kirby Smart. And then midway through the second quarter against Ole Miss at home, let's just say you're down by 7. He's thrown an interception. You've had an early fumble. Let's say it looks like, the Mizzou game did last year. Let's say something like that happens and Carson Beck has trouble on his horizon. A lot of people will hear this and they'll say, well, how's he going to respond? I have those questions too. My question is, how are you going to respond, Georgia fan? The Georgia fan that always kind of responds to these first moments of with a lot of negativity. You tend to do that sometimes, right? And honestly, I know this about you. You know this about you. And your new quarterback, he knows this about you as well. He knows how brutal fan bases can be because he watched the guy before him. When asked today, what did you learn most from Stetson Bennett's experience as the Georgia quarterback over the last 30 starts? Do you know what his answer was? His answer was, I learned most about how Stetson responded to how all you guys talked about him. How he responded to the narrative being driven around his play. That's what I learned most about the 6-foot former walk-on that started here 30 games. Not how to control the locker room, not how to respond to pressure. Nah. How to handle the brutality that comes from being the starting quarterback at the University of Georgia. How long is that leash with Kirby Smart going to be? How long is that leash with you guys going to be? How long is that leash inside the huddle going to be with this quarterback? I'll be honest with you. I think the leash is going to be relatively long inside the building, and here's why. because the commitment from Carson Beck and the commitment to Carson Beck has been a very layered approach with Georgia and with Carson from start. They committed to Carson with this offensive identity. They did it back in the spring. If you listen to the way guys have been speaking this fall, they have kind of known Carson's going to be their guy. They have angled towards it. They have installed towards it. They have talked about it within house, knowing, for the most part, with pretty certainty that Carson's going to be the guy. They've been committed to this offensive identity. They are committed to this new offensive identity. They've committed resources to that quarterback, Carson Beck. We talked about it with Aaron Murray 2 nights ago. They went out and got Dominic Lovett. They went out and got Ra Thomas. They went out and got receivers, weapons, right? Passing targets. They didn't go out and get an additional H-back or tight end. They didn't go out and get another running back to help with a run-based offense. No. They went out and got weapons for their processing quarterback. They've committed to rewarding patience around this program at the University of Georgia. If you wait your turn, you will get your run. You will have to lose your job at the University of Georgia if you are upperclassmen and you are willing to stick around. They reward the patience around this program, and they damn sure reward the process. If you buy into the process, if you continue to get better day in and day out, if you buy in to the culture that is set in stone at the University of Georgia, you will get your chance. It's been a layered, committed process to Carson Beck and the University of Georgia this offseason. I think he absolutely will have a longer leash than most people will expect, as long as the narrative around him remains positive. I'll be honest, I think sometimes all it takes is one bad drive or one bad pocket management series where we look a little flustered before people are running to Twitter and say, oh, this ain't the guy, get Brock in there. You just got to be a lot more patient, particularly with a first-year starter. I mean, this guy has not played competitive starting football for 4 years. This is going to have some growing pains.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say, is people have to expect and just understand that there are going to be growing pains and that this is going to be a little bit of a process. But as you said, you're not going to really find out until later in the season. So that's a good thing in that regard, as you kind of get to work some kinks out and kind of feel the vibe out a little bit until those games come around. But that's also a bad thing in a sense of we may not really find out truly who this offense and Carson Beck is until Ole Miss. But I think he's going to have a pretty long leash because he's earned it at this point.
He certainly has earned it. I just, from his confidence standpoint, he doesn't seem to necessarily be motivated by outside noise, or else he would have already been gone. Like, if this dude cared about what other people were telling him or what other people thought about him, he would already have been transferred to Florida, or he would have already transferred to Alabama. Because I think people forget. I went back and thought about it today. Carson Beck was committed verbally to Alabama and then committed to Georgia. Those are two programs that if you make the decision to go play there, you are embracing competition. That's what you're doing. You're not avoiding it. You're seeking it. You are seeking the opportunity to compete against people who are as talented or more talented than you for the better part of 4 or 5 years. These kids know, they should know. They should know what they're getting themselves into when they do this. Carson certainly has.
So I kind of have a problem with this idea that we're not going to find out about the offense till Ole Miss game. Because if you look back at previous schedules, 2021, it was kind of, all right, we're going to find out as soon as the Clemson game goes, but then there's not really anything between that. And it turns out you've got number 7 Arkansas coming to Athens. Last year, obviously, you had the Missouri episode. I think you'll find out sometime sooner than the Ole Miss game. I think it'll be sooner than late November. But I think you're right about Carson Beck having a longer leash. I will say, though, if he loses the job or if he has to sit, there's a chance that he doesn't win it back. Of the 6 quarterbacks Kirby Smart has named in his time at Georgia, he's named 6 different guys to be starting quarterback. Only 2 of them have finished the season when they started.
Stetson and Jake Fromm.
Yep. Jake Fromm did it twice in 2018 and 19. Everyone else started.
And in 18, he didn't even name him. He didn't name him until the fall.
Yeah,
because he did the whole thing where he made Justin Fields a running back.
I think people forget that Grayson Lambert was the starter for the 2016 season. I think
Lambert,
it was very brief. It was kind of at the beginning of the UNC game, and then once Jacob Eason got in, it was his offense from that point on. But that's easy to forget.
Now, to be fair, of those 4 guys that got benched, 2 of them were benched in the first game, and the other 2 suffered injuries and never won it back. So, I mean, I think, like you said, he's got a very long leash, but he can also, if he loses his job, it might not be so easy getting it back. Or if, Carson Beck's got a sprained ankle or an oblique injury, he'll be back in 2 weeks. He might not be back. So I think that's where the leash gets short for him. But as far as gameplay goes, it's...
I was about to ask, and I'm just thinking out loud, if Kirby's mindset about this topic has changed after watching the maturation process of a super old player in Stetson Bennett. I can't remember how many times even Kirby would say, well, we know what we've got in Stetson, right? The whole reason they didn't even give him reps when JT was there was because they felt like they knew who he was. And then through the 30 starts of him actually winning the job, you can't seriously sit here and tell me that Stetson Bennett Game 1 2021 is the same caliber of player that he was when he walked off the field against TCU. He wasn't. He got like incrementally better. He got so much better as a football player during that time. And there were so many different little roads and so many different little gaps where Kirby could have easily said, this guy's struggling way too much, turning the damn ball over way too much, not playing like I want to, not playing like quarterbacks should under my system or my football team. We've got to make a change. And every single time he just kept sticking with him. And I wonder if watching that prevail, watching the like I said, the maturation of Stetson over those years, if that maybe has changed his mind with regards to these quarterback discussions. Obviously, we won't know until we actually see Carson Beck struggle. And see him stand by that guy in the midst of trouble. But I think it can be some guys can be way too quick to just, there's the struggle point. Let's put Vandergriff in there.
Well, I think from like thinking of how Stetson played in the 2021 SEC championship game to how he played in the 2021 college football playoffs, I think even that's a very different quarterback. Stetson played with confidence in the national championship game against Alabama, and we kind of saw him a little bit flustered in the 2021 SEC championship game. And from that point on, though, that was who Stetson Bennett was. He was clutch, he was dependable, and he was a guy that was going to show up in the big moments. So maybe if Carson does struggle a little bit in that first big game that he comes across, who knows? That might be a huge growing point for him that turns him into that next level.
Do you want it to happen early? Like if you're a Georgia fan, do you want kind of like a Mizzou scare against South Carolina to kind of find out? Now we had our first sweater out of the way. Now we can really, get comfortable into competing.
I mean, ideally, you don't want it to happen at all. But if you did, per se, if you had to have it happen, I think having it earlier in the season against a team where you can muster up a win like a South Carolina or a Mizzou, especially in a home environment, I think that's more preferable than maybe being on the road in late November when things really, really matter. I think it also shows that Kirby was more willing to ride out the moment. Stetson Bennett wasn't like consistently great even through last year. There were moments where he looked flustered in the Missouri game. In Kentucky, he didn't have a great game. Even in 2021 in Tennessee, he had a couple of bad moments to start that game, but Kirby stuck with him. I think Kirby is now much more willing to ride out these ebbs and flows than anything. So if Carson Beck has that, I think it'll be fine.
You know what really helps your willingness or your ability to stick with the decision you made? Having 2 national titles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It feels really easy to not question yourself when you're kind of on the top of what you do. And I think we might see examples of that portrayed this season with regards to this quarterback decision. Even though, I'll be honest with you, man, like even the quote unquote tough games, Ole Miss and Tennessee, and let's throw South Carolina in the mix. Ain't none of those guys world record defense holders. Like none of those guys are going to have elite defenses. They may not face a top 10, top 15, top 20 defense until December in the SEC championship game. That's almost, to me, you sit here and say that's good news if you're a Georgia fan. To me, as an analyst and as someone who always thinks about this from a coaching perspective, or what would I do if I were the coach of that football team, that scares the piss out of me because I don't know. I'm going to go into the biggest war of the year, December 7th, and I'm not going to know. I'm not going to know who we are on the battlefield. That scares me.
Kind of pivoting on that, it works the same way with the defense. Like if the defense has a moment where they don't look great and you have to have your quarterback win, Carson Beck's going to be very important in that. The last 3 games that I think Georgia could have at least lost in the last 2 seasons when they won were 2021 SEC Championship, defense completely failed. Peach Bowl, defense gave up, 42 points. And then 2019 Mizzou, or 2022 Mizzou, defense kind of gave up a bunch of plays on that. So,
a bunch of explosives.
Yeah, so if your defense is going to give up plays as well, can your quarterback answer the call? Stetson Bennett didn't do it in 2021, obviously, but he did the other 2 games, and you have 2 national championships because of it. So you need Carson Beck to step up in a big way too.
You're right. I think if you track the, 3 or 4 losses that Georgia's had in the last 4 years, the opposition scored 40 points in every single one.
Yeah, even in 2020 against Florida, they had like 28 first half points.
Yeah, old Kyle Trask had 300 yards in the first half.
Yeah, so I mean, Stetson Bennett didn't play great, yeah, but you can't put that on him when the defense is giving up 28.
Which, again, we haven't seen. We haven't seen Georgia's defense give up a gusher since Ohio State, right? That one, and then Alabama in 2021, the SEC championship game. They gave up some bleeders in that football game. Yeah, an interesting discussion. Like I said, the most important thing is tracking the history record with all these guys. And I laid it out, right? We talked about the commitment from the offensive identity standpoint. We talked about the commitment from the resources standpoint, going out and getting transfers. But the last ones, the committing and rewarding patience in the program is important when you recruit at the rate that they do. They have players on this football team that look at the roster and the depth chart and they believe they may never play. So when they have the opportunity to, and they finally climb their way to the top of that depth chart through diligence and through patience and through trusting the process, you have to reward it. I think we'll see that this year at the University of Georgia. Hey, before we do our talks and our discussions about Julian Lewis, should we go ahead and knock out concept of the day?
Oh, yeah.
I think we should. All right, so let's get over to the board. Let's just talk about this over here. I wonder if sound. I haven't seen any comments about the sound tonight, so we must be all right.
I think we're good.
You know, it's been a thing of growing pains around here. Well, like we told you, we're changing, we're growing, we're in the middle of an evolution phase, if you will, on this network. So I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Make sure you're hitting that thumbs up button. Let's talk a little football, because as the season starts, when we start getting fresh tape, we're going to be out here grinding tape, and I'm going to be out here saying things, and I'm going to need you guys to be with me, okay, and understand what I'm talking about. So today's concept, middle of the field open versus middle of the field closed, okay? A lot of offenses these days are what we call half-field read offenses. They're pick and stick offenses. They're offenses predicated on allowing quarterbacks to make decisions quickly. Most of those decisions will start with one question. Is the middle of the field open or is the middle of the field closed? All right, we call these MOFOs and MOFC, right? MOFO, middle of field open. MOFC, middle of the field closed. So when we write defenses, we will label them MOFO or MOFC, all right? So let's talk about MOFO. MOFO is our even coverages for the most part, except for 6. 6 gets a little funky. Let's erase all of this. Let's talk about middle of the field open. So if I have a middle of the field open coverage, I have a free safety here, and I have a strong safety here, and I have a corner here, right? And I have a corner here. I don't know why I put an end. When these guys are two safety looks, right? The middle of the field is open. So now as an offense, I know, hey, if I have any type of post routes, I know they're going to work towards the middle of the field. Okay, if I have to occupy safety or anything, we're going to pull them this way. All right, we're going to pull them this way. We also know that we're going to have some drop coverage in here from different linebackers. So when we see middle of the field open, okay, like we have right here, we have a multitude of options. We can see cover 2 or cover 4. All right, cover 2 is these guys playing their 2 holes. These guys playing the flat out here. All right, and then everybody else taking responsibility for the subsequent spaces. All right, if we were to go to cover 4, it's as simple as it sounds. We're going to take what was a 2-hole look and now turn it into a 4-hole look. A lot of high school football teams love to play cover 4. Why? Because they keep everything in front of them. They don't have to worry about getting beat because everyone on the field is taught, hey, you got your deep quarter, don't get beat. Anybody runs into your void, you keep going. Now, let's talk about middle field closed looks. These are all of our cover 1s and our cover 3s. It sounds exactly like it is, all right? And the reason most teams run it is because they are having problems stopping the run. They need to add a safety into the box. A lot of high school football teams start to run this when they can't stop the run. So the safety that normally gets added into the box is who?
Strong safety.
Hey, look at it. So we're going to do what's called a split safety look. Post snap, we're going to roll safeties. We're going to roll the safety into the box to the strong side. We're going to roll the free safety to the middle of the field. Now, what does this do to us as an offense? Well, I will tell you. Now the middle of the field is closed. So now we work a lot of seams, right? We work a lot of seams up the hashes, okay? We work a lot of dovers, and we work a lot of stuff into the flat. All right, so this is why you've seen over the years teams start to work a lot more check with me concepts, right? They'll come to the line of scrimmage, they'll say down set hut, they'll fake clap their hands, they'll look to the sideline, coach will give them something new. What coach is giving them is an answer to the test that's on the field right now. Is the middle of the field open? Is the middle of the field closed? However that depiction looks, when we see it, that's how we go about calling offensive plays. Don't know if I did a great job there. Mic noise. Yep. So it is the movement. They say it's catching my shirt. I honestly think it's the movement. Moving back and forth. It is a wireless mic, though. You think it would be fine. Hopefully it settles just a little bit for you guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Any idea on coverages? Any concepts, any talks, any talking points on coverages?
Do you got anything, Jay Will? Because, I mean,
I think I'll let you take this one.
It is kind of interesting to when you talk about guys like Ed Reed where they line up in the wrong position.
On purpose?
On purpose, so that the defense goes, oh, it's middle of field closed. It's probably cover 2 here.
I saw Chris Smith do this last year where, send me to the mess around. All right, so Chris Smith's playing on the right hash, okay? So it looks like it's too high. The middle of the field looks open. And before the snap, he opens his hips like this. If you're the quarterback, Chris Smith's looking at you square. And then as soon as the quarterback made eye contact with him, Chris did like this and faked as if he was going to open up to the middle of the field post-snap, okay? And then as the ball snapped, immediately jumped back to where he was going, which was back down the hill. It's no different than when a ball's hit into the gap and the runner is stealing second base. The shortstop and the second baseman act like they got a ground ball and they fake deke to try to get the guy to slide into second base. All we're doing is trying to give false cues. And if we're smart enough to do these things, we can really, really, really fuck with the quarterback on the other side of the football, right? Because they're trying their hardest to just collect information. That's all they're doing. And if we can alter that information or if we can falsify that information, we're really going to make their post-snap read tough.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can manipulate a defense or a quarterback so many different ways with just looks. And the same on offense. That's why I love football, because it truly is a chess match before you even start a play. You can line up in so many different variations where you have your strong safety rolled down, free safety up, show a blitz on that, and then he's dropping into a curl flat zone. So you can do so many different things, which is what makes the sport so fun because there's so much variation.
It's what makes the sport so fun, and it's what makes playing the quarterback position the hardest position in sports, because, I mean, it's not just the responsibilities. It's not just, hey, you're the face of our program. It's everything. It's the decision-making. It's the processing ability. It's the physical requirements nowadays to play the position. It's why I'm so fascinated with it. I study quarterback play far more than I do even offensive line play anymore because, well, I kind of know what's going on there. The offensive line play hasn't really revolutionized or changed in, I'd say, like the last 10 years. They've kind of been doing the same stuff. Ever since I've been playing, they've been doing the same stuff. Quarterback play has changed in the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. The guys we see drafted nowadays look totally different than they did 5 or 6 years ago. They play totally different than they did 5 or 6 years ago. I don't know where the position's going, but I know it's going up. You know what I mean? I know it's 100% going up. And it's because of guys like the next guy we're going to talk about, Julian Lewis, the number one quarterback in America, the number one player in America in the 2026 class, committed yesterday out of kind of nowhere to the USC Trojans and Lincoln Riley. It was always going to be an air raid team. Okay, if you knew this guy, if you knew this young man, if you knew the people around him, if you knew his coach in high school right now, if you knew anything about Julian Lewis, you knew for a fact it was going to be an air raid football team that this young man committed to. Okay, it's what he plays in now. It's what fits his skill set best. And I want to take you back to a quote that I got from him this spring when I went and saw him out there at Carrollton High School. Quote, speaking about Georgia, by the way, right here. They're known for defense recently like before last year. They were like a no-throw, we're going to pound the ball, beat you down your throat football team. Last year they aired it out. That was with Coach Monken. But they said they're planning on doing the same thing this year. Okay, Georgia still has this identity of being a ground and pound football team, of being a we're going to punch you in the mouth football team, of being a defensive first, offensive second football team. That is the identity that is known in the public sector about the University of Georgia, despite the fact that your quarterback last year was sitting in New York and threw for 4,000 yards. It doesn't really matter because of the way in which he did it. It wasn't the way in which Julian Lewis wants to play football. All right, Julian Lewis is the one and only quarterback I allow people to compare to Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is an evaluation point that ceases to exist nowadays. Joe Burrow is not 6'5", not 230 pound, not God's gift to football throwing wise, not an athlete, not a superior athlete. He's not a freak. Every other player that is as great as Joe Burrow is right now is a freak. Josh Allen is a freak. Patrick Mahomes is a freak. All these guys that play the quarterback position at the young age that are really, really talented, they're all freaks. Julian Lewis is not a freak. Julian Lewis is not one of these physical specimens. Julian Lewis's freak ability is right here. That dude processes information better than any 15-year-old kid I've ever evaluated in my life. He is probably the best processor of information right now on the high school level. He is the type of football player that the moment he steps foot into your starting huddle, you design the offense around that fact that he is not going to make bad decisions, that he is going to process information and put the ball in the right person's hands. You know who doesn't revamp their entire offense or their entire culture or their entire football team for one player? Georgia. They never really have, and they probably won't. Okay, so this skill set of Julian Lewis may not have ever fit with the identity that is Georgia football, and that's okay. And I'm also here to tell you that I don't necessarily think it's the right decision to not have offered that. All right? I don't think it's necessarily the wrong or the right decision or the wrong decision to tell a 15-year-old kid who is a sophomore in high school that may be the best quarterback recruit we've ever seen come out of this state. I don't know if it's right or wrong to tell that kid, yeah, when you get here, we'll change everything about how we do things. I don't know if that's right. But I kind of know that was going to be required, and you weren't willing to do that right now. So that's okay. We can let that happen. And I'm here to tell you that from Julian Lewis's perspective, God dang if he didn't make the right decision yesterday. I mean, who doesn't want to play for Lincoln Riley at the quarterback position? Let's be honest. Who wouldn't want to go win a Heisman? Because if you play for that guy, you win one. That's the fact. So, yeah, if you're Julian Lewis, if you're arguably the best quarterback we've seen in high school football in God knows how long, go play for the guy that is a known commodity at that spot, that know for a fact won't change a thing about how you play football. Go do that, and that's okay. I think that's one thing Georgia fans need to get a little bit better about, and you're great. You're awesome. It's the reason we do what we do here. You're awesome. You're the best in the world. Don't get me wrong on this. But when you take L's, you could take them a little more gracefully on the recruiting trail because you sure as shit don't take a lot of them. All right, so when a kid makes a decision like he did yesterday, and I don't think you guys were – I don't even think y'all were mad about this one. I think y'all kind of knew the writing was on the wall in its entirety. Did you not, boys?
I mean, yeah, it's like you were saying. Why wouldn't you go play for Lincoln Riley? Just like if you were a 5-star wide receiver, why would you not go play for Brian Hartline at Ohio State? If you are a 5-star linebacker, why would you not go play for Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart at Georgia? It's those types of things. I mean, if that's my kid or if that's me in that situation, I'm probably doing the same thing. So you can't exactly get mad at the situation when it may not even be more on your part. It's just that someone has a better offer than you over on the West Coast. So I just don't think there is much to be mad at about.
Not to mention, if you look at this Georgia quarterback room and you look at the trends as it gone for quarterback, you don't start till your third, maybe fourth season there. Like, that's just the way it's been. It's kind of gone. Stetson Bennett waited 3 years to get his turn. Then it's Carson Beck. He's not starting until senior year. Brock Vandergrift's probably going to start then. Then you've got Dylan Raiola, Ryan Puglisi maybe battling it after that. It's such a crowded quarterback room that you would have to be battling for a spot just to be a second stringer as soon as you get on campus. I don't think he wants that. I think he wants to be the guy when you come in day one. Maybe not start year one, but have it be your team by the time you're a sophomore or junior.
We've kind of given Lincoln Riley some hell around this program the last couple of days with regards to, and you're going to hear us talk about it with Pay here in a little bit, with regards to his allocation of resources on the defensive side of the football. But when you talk about how to stack your quarterback room, having Caleb Williams this year, Malachi Nelson starts for them next year, 18 months from now, Julian Lewis enrolls. I mean, it don't get much better.
Yeah, no, that's the best recruiting pitch you could possibly get if you're Julian Lewis. So, yeah.
Not even that. It's like you said. I would love to know what the statistical percent chance you have of winning the Heisman as a Lincoln Riley quarterback or being a first-round pick. because he's made what? Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield,
Jalen Hurts.
Caleb Williams,
Or
Jalen Hurts.
No,
didn't win the
he didn't
Heisman.
win one. That's
But
right.
those three are the Heisman.
Jalen Hurts was a second-round pick, wasn't
Oh,
he?
shit. Kyler Murray won a Heisman, too.
Yeah, Kyler Murray won a Heisman. So
Did
it's
you say
also like,
Baker?
yeah,
Yeah.
Baker won the Heisman. But they were both, Kyler and Baker were both first overall picks, too. And I'm pretty sure Caleb Williams is going to
Yeah,
be
he
a first
will be.
overall pick this year as well. So it's
Hot
like,
take.
so it's like you have such a good shot at doing that. Why not go to USC and play for Lincoln Riley?
And he just doesn't miss. Like it's impossible not to look great in that system.
Mm-hmm.
We've done film studies on it. We've shown you how easy he makes it on his quarterback, and especially when he has a great one. When he has a great quarterback, it looks really, really easy for that guy. Hey, any final thoughts before we send him out? Are we good for the day?
I have a question for you because
What's
I
up?
want to touch on this with all the running back injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Does Georgia have a running back that goes over 500 yards this year?
Yeah, I mean by nature, they have to. Right? When was the last time they didn't?
I don't even know if I could.
It doesn't happen.
Probably 2009, 2010.
I have no idea. It is. I highly doubt it's ever happened. 500 yards?
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
I'm just thinking
That's
with
like 40 yards a game, isn't it?
yeah, but I'm just thinking with how much you're
Math is mathing so hard around here lately, dude. Go ahead.
I'm just thinking about how much you're going to rotate players, and you might have injuries. I mean, there's a good chance Dejon Edwards and Kendall Milton don't play till South Carolina, and then by that point, Cash Jones is working in as well. So I don't think it's going to happen. But you look at that, it's kind of like, well, there's not a lot of depth here, and there's a chance that you get more injuries as the season goes.
Bro,
So,
I really think Cash Jones finna eat this year.
I do too.
Like, I know we make jokes. I know we do. I mean, our Discord is filled with memes. It is. I get it. I like to joke too. But I'm serious. I think 32 is a good football player. All right? The dude can jump on top of his F-250 in flip-flops. All right? He's got bunnies. He's got explosivity. He's strong as shit. They've told you that. Pound for pound, strongest dude on the roster. Pound for pound, said Kirby Smart. That's a good football player, and he's going to have a good season. I truly believe that. And by the way, he's worked a good bit with Carson in this first unit. He was running ones in the spring. In the spring, think about that. That dude was taking ones reps. It's not just a new phenomenon that Cash Money Jones finna get some burn this year for the University of Georgia. Hey, for Brooks Austin, for the Film Guy Network, make sure you're subscribed and make sure you're hitting rate and review, all that good stuff, leaving comments below. We'll see you in about 5 minutes, and we got a big one. Love you. See you.